Thank you so much for joining CxXchange Success Hour today. Our topic I'm really excited about is how to prevent and manage burnout. And we have two just fantastic people to lead us through this discussion today. Ryan Johansen and Ashna Patel. So just feel so fortunate to have you both here to lead us through this topic. And let's see if you can just maybe introduce yourself. We'll start with Ryan and then we'll go to Ashna.
Hey everyone, I'm Ryan Johansen. I'm based in the Boston area. Super excited to be here. I recognize a few of the names, and I run a company called Stress Less and Get More Done. And I've been talking about this topic for about 4 years now. So it's definitely near and dear to my heart, and looking forward to this discussion today.
Yeah, definitely a great name for a business. Stress less and get more done. Let's all sign up, right?
Yeah.
All right,
sure.
Ashna.
Hi, everyone. I'm sure, I've probably met and saw a lot of you because I've come here so many times and I work with Jan, but I'm pretty, I guess, invested in this particular topic. And for those of you who may have attended, I've done another session on prevent and manage burnout almost 6-7 months ago with Jan on the Success Hour. So excited to be here. I've had history of the burnout and look through, and I help people with that too on the side. So it's just it's good to be here to talk about it, especially with Jan and Ryan on this topic.
Awesome. Thank you. So great. It's great to have folks here. And if you've just joined, let's just add in the links again, including for our YouTube page, because it's not even indexed. You can't even search for it yet. So you need that link. Go and subscribe to that. And be sure to add in your LinkedIn URL and what town you're in today. Because for some of us, it's really warm. For others, it's 61 degrees in Duluth. So, all right, let's go ahead and get started though. And I was really excited to talk about this topic, and I had the chance not only to start digging into this conversation with Ashna, but then I was in a webinar with Ryan and ran into him over at a conference. And I just thought, oh my God, we have to bring Ryan into this conversation too. So when you think about it, though, we're all in these jobs where it can be very easy to feel overwhelmed, right? Whether you're doing your own business like I am, or in the past when I've been at various jobs, or just anything whether you're a CSM or a CS leader, or if you're looking and transitioning from one role to the next, right? Like you can get very overwhelmed. But when you think about how the state of mental health in 2024, it's also, we're coming off of the pandemic, right? We're still sort of adjusting to this new world. And our companies are adjusting to that. We've also, SaaS tech has gone through a lot of change. And the whole mantra of do more with less, and sometimes not getting additional tools to do that, to make that adjustment. Things like that. All of a sudden we find ourselves having to do all of these strategies, and the way that we have been working, right, it doesn't necessarily work now for how we used to work in the past. Certainly it doesn't work the same way when we used to be in the office. Now we're working from home. Now you might be working at a hybrid job, or maybe even people who've been going in and out of different roles from, within just a few short months, right? So just a lot of change and stress, and the way that has impacted. You see, this comes from, what does SHRM stand for again? It's basically the HR professional industry association. And they basically did a survey here that kind of showed that stress is real, and it's impacting our mental health, and it's impacting our businesses. So let's see, let's go back for a second. Maybe first, Ashna, are we going to dig into this slide a little bit?
Yeah. So thank you. So I guess, before we kind of go into the topic, which is how to prevent and manage burnout, let's kind of dig in a little bit. Let's backtrack a little bit and let's first understand what is burnout, why should we care about it? Then we can jump into the how. So when we were, looking at this and we're just like, hey, let's just, let's dive into this. And what is burnout? And the simplest way of saying this is, as you can read here, it's a workplace, stress that causes mental, physical, and emotional exhaustion. And what we oftentimes don't understand and don't realize is that there's a lot of times we're just looking at the surface level and we don't dig in, what's below the surface level. And burnout can look like different for almost every single person on this call. It's different for everyone. It could be you're procrastinating, you're lacking motivation, you're so distracted, you're helpless. I mean, it could be so many of those things that can lead to burnout. So that in a nutshell is, a burnout. When you think about burnout doesn't really happen with just one thing, but it can be a combination of so many little things that can lead to burnout. And that's what we have to, understand is what are these little things, little signs that are causing burnout for us, because it's going to be completely different for, Ryan versus Jan versus me because of how we are and who we are. So that's a little bit about what is burnout. Yeah.
And somebody just mentioned in the chat, can we also talk about job search burnout? And, it's part of what happens too when we get laid off is then we might need to recover a little bit, right?
Yeah.
And you start to reflect on the prior job. And I was just going to look, there's a channel that we just started actually for this discussion. And I'm just going to look for it. It's not member offers and discounts though. I'm looking for it and I will put it in the Slack as soon as I come up with it, because I thought I had it and now I don't have it. But there's definitely part of it is just needing to talk to others about it, right? And yeah.
So that was kind of like the what is, burnout at what it looks like at the surface level. You want to dig in deeper. You want to understand what that is for you. So now the question is like, why should we address it? And a lot of these things that I'm saying today is you could be like, hey, I know this already. But just remember, we're trying to give you kind of like this recap of what burnout is and why should we address it. Because a lot of the time that little bit of a procrastination, that little bit of a, lack of motivation, and you're just like, hey, I'm distracted, or maybe I'm allowing myself to be distracted, can lead to delaying your progress at work. Because you might be behind on some of those things, and then someone else probably in your work probably gets ahead of the game and they're, progressing and you're not. And then at the end of the day, you may feel like, hey, I've got tons of things on my plate. But if you really dig in, you can't find, there's so many things that you're choosing or you're allowing yourself to be distracted at, or you're allowing yourself to be doing it, which is causing you burnout. Now, I'm not saying that burnout, you are the only person that can fix burnout. There's, especially workplace burnout, there's a lot of things, a lot of factors come in place, which is why you have to understand what are the things that you have control over versus what are the things that you don't have control over. So that's one of the reasons, like, why should you address it? Delay, so that it doesn't delay progress at work or decrease your performance. And then you can kind of get into, so you can, the prevention and the management, techniques here, which we're going to kind of dive into with like a little, workshop kind of thing too, which we've created for you. But really the key part here is that you have to understand your own system and what is not working for you and what is working for you. So you have to identify what it looks like, what that burnout looks like for you. So it's almost like asking yourself, like, okay, if I am not, if I have too much workload, why is it that? Dive deeper and deeper into it, like that funnel, so that you can really understand what is it, what does that look like? What are those stress signs for you? And then you can focus on, okay, what are some of these early signs? Because far too many times we're too behind, like we're too invested in this, and we ignore early signs, and all of us have those early signs that we can kind of see for burnout. And it could just be like, I am just, I'm just looking at my phone so much in between, or I am taking things that I shouldn't be taking. I'm not saying no's in some of the things that I should have been saying no's, no to. And so these are some of these early signs, or I am not going and taking breaks when I need to, or I'm not moving myself a lot, because, there's physical symptoms of burnout too. Burnout doesn't just happen for you at work. Whatever happens with burnout at work also, you also take that to your home too. So you have to look at those early signs, and then you have to experiment with some of the prevention techniques. And lastly, is one of the biggest thing is that you have to reach out and ask for help. Now, I know I said a lot, and I'm going to ask this, maybe Jan or Ryan to jump in, but go ahead. Sorry, Jan.
Well, I remembered the name of the channel. I knew it had start in the name of it, but I was looking in the S's, but it's Fresh Start. And what happened was I was discussing, because I think that that's very real, where you can just get not only so stressed out by a job, but also it takes a lot to recover from a job, right? And so anyway, so it was something I was talking about with Greta von Zelensky and also Jill Farias, and where you really start to question, like, did I make the right career choice, right? And that sort of thing. And Ryan, you changed your career, right? As a result of stress. Maybe you can tell a little bit of your story about it.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, this all happened to me before 2020. So I was in CS2 and got promoted to a management role. And I think when you think of it, us as CSMs, we tend to like to make people happy. We go above and beyond, struggle to say no to things because you want to make people happy, take things a little bit personally sometimes. So that factor all contributed to me working like 80, 90-hour weeks. And I obviously hated failure. And it led to me I found myself having to put myself in a hospital because I wasn't sleeping. I wasn't taking care of myself. I was just a completely miserable human being. And that's why I started my company about 4 years ago, because what I found was that, like, obviously, worst scenario in the world, don't wish it on my worst enemy. It was horrible. But the thing that I learned is you can start to build some coping skills to deal with things like that. And the thing I was trying to find out right away, which is kind of the common thing you might start out with, is, hey, how do I get rid of stress? How do I make these things easy? When it's really not the question you want to ask, because we face adversity in life and we face challenges. So I don't know if anyone's ever heard the saying, like, don't try and strengthen my legs, strengthen my back. So it's like, oh, don't lighten my load, strengthen my back. So it's learning how to like handle some of these things. So it can be really difficult when you're in the thick of stuff like this. And I can totally relate. Like I said, I come from a place of empathy, having been through a lot of this stuff before. But one thing that really helped me, which I'm a huge believer in, is when you're in a rut and you're stuck, if you've ever been in the situation where like it's really hard to ask for help, or you can move on to the next slide.
Yeah. Okay.
If you're ever like having a hard time or asking for help for someone, maybe you get advice from someone and you're like, that was so obvious, I wish I thought of that. Or if you can ever think of like how it's so much easier to give advice to someone than to think through a problem for yourself. This is a really simple way of starting to do stuff like that. So the principle here is called objectivity. And it's a way where you start to create some distance between kind of the racing thoughts that you have and start to look on it on a more logical basis and start to come up with some strategies and some plans to handle things like this. This is something I work with a lot of clients through to.
And Ryan, well, I was just going to ask, so like when you're in that emotional place where you're just feeling overwhelmed and you have sort of deer in headlights, then this is sort of a way to kind of get through that and get past the emotion by kind of going over to the logical side and starting to sort of break through that deer in headlights. Is that kind of the idea? I
mean, more or less. So it's like the thing that I learned in that hospital situation, I'll give an anecdote and a story from when I was in there. There's another patient in there who thought I was a CIA spy and that I was trying to like invade his privacy and things like that. And then I had the hint that, okay, if his brain's telling him that I'm a spy, it may be me thinking that I'm going to live under a bridge and I'm a total failure if I don't get a renewal isn't reasonably easier. So the principle is using like objectivity or challenging your thoughts. And the process in that is called cognitive behavioral therapy. It's pretty common. So it's when you look at those thoughts and you challenge them. So what typically happens is these things called thought distortions. And there's several different kinds of them. And it's ways where the way we perceive something isn't always the reality. That can go as much as you're left off an email and then you start to think, hey, this person has it out for me. That's kind of a minimal example with, it can be much more extreme. But why this is so helpful is by taking a second to step back and start to look at these things with some space, you can start to look at it in a more kind of clear way. The best thing to do, and I'll give a plug for this, like get professional help, because that's a thing where like you can talk it out with, you start to unpack some of these patterns that you have and understand them. I'm a huge proponent of getting therapy. I talk with my therapist every week, like work through these hard challenges, because your brain, like it's trying to do its best, but it's not always accurate. So this is one of the like principles that I use. So I do this with like a couple different problem scenarios. This is one where I built it out. So it's something where like one of the hardest things is like, you can have the perfect system, but like we always default to the norm. So it's going to be a little bit more challenging. We start to fall back into old routines. That's human, it happens. But then that can turn into a slump. Maybe like, I run my own company. It's extremely stressful. Things go wrong all the time. And maybe I'm having more downs than normal. That can quickly lead to me being in a slump, which is hard to get out of. Even with knowing all these tools and having all this education, it still takes me to take a step back and look at some of these things. So you can use something like this as a way to identify that, hey, I'm not taking care of myself. These are just pretty much like a lot of these things are things that will go for me. I don't use substances, but things like I know that I get a little bit more irritable with people. I might come off as a little bit less excited. I don't take breaks when I'm going through a scenario like this. So this is going to help me identify, okay, I'm going down the rabbit hole.
Yeah.
So on this bounce back activities, these are things that like, you're giving yourself a plan and almost making this decision really easy for you when your cognitive like capacity is at its lowest, when you're at that burnout phase. So you almost give yourself like that get out of jail free card of, hey, I had a horrible day. These are some activities that make me feel happier. Like this is my playbook for when I feel like I'm a total mess. So if you look at, so you can just come up like a good thing is to just brainstorm a couple activities. And this looks different for everyone. So like you want to figure out like, what are some of the, your areas of struggle, your triggers, what does that look like for you? You put your bounce back activities of like, okay, these are the things that make me feel better. Maybe it's, I'm going for a workout or a long run. I'm talking to someone that I like to. And then maybe you put together a plan like on this. So if I knew it's going to go really bad, I know people, like I have people on my bench that I'll give a call and say like, hey, I'm having a rough time or I'm stuck on this. Like, can I like run this by you and see what you think here? So the whole idea is like getting these thoughts out of your head, getting on paper, because the benefit here is that you're able to take a step back and start to really like look at these things from a more clear lens instead of like being as emotional about it when it's really hard to plan. So that's kind of a rundown of how that might work.
Awesome.
Now-
And so then we have actually a blank one that's in the slides. So you can use this. It's already ready for you to do. Sorry, Ashna, what were you going to say?
No, I think to what Ryan was saying, Ryan, would you also kind of say that, a lot of these bounce back activities, like you said, it's the things that, you love doing. And when you're burned out, that level of these like you can see through when you're looking through, like you're reflecting, kind of understanding, what am I doing right now? What are these things or warnings and early signs? And you can see and realize that those activities are the ones that are like at the lower level. Basically, I'm not doing so many of those activities, which is also one of the reasons why I am so burnt out, because I'm not doing what brings me joy in an everyday life. Would you agree to that?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and the other thing, I'm sorry, I'm over in the chat and I'm hearing, a couple of things. Linda, do you want to maybe speak up? You were talking about a particular book that was helpful to you.
Yes, it's called Chatter, The Voice in Our Head and Why It Matters. And what it really does is it talks about getting control of your head under almost what we were just talking about, taking a step back and almost being a fly on the wall in your own head, to really try to see, so you're not taking it so personally. You're looking at a situation or thoughts that are going through your head, but you're not living them. You've stepped away. Also, I'm going to suggest one other thing in there, which they talked about a study, and it's about getting out into nature. And they did a study with people in like Section 8 housing, and those that were surrounded by green space, they had a much better attitude than those that were like in the middle of an inner city with no green, no trees, no nothing. And so if you're really struggling, get outside, get your feet in the grass, get to walk on a beach, do anything, get into nature. And I will say that really helps me an awful lot. I get out and I walk, unless it's like really crappy out, every morning before I start my day. Really, really important. Get outside and just see the green, but really can't recommend this book enough, because I will say I get in my head an awful lot and I get in my own way from doing something. And so to me, this was great strategies for beating that.
Well, and the reason why that really resonates with me, Linda, thank you so much for sharing. When I was doing therapy, the last time I think was a while back when I first moved to LA, and literally like there was a more of a therapist type book than this one. And the therapist was working with me, and I literally like mapping out my thoughts and thinking about how to change them, right? So that like and I was just listening to a session of a different webinar today. And, like when you're thinking about your mindset, and if you tell yourself, I can't do this, if instead you just add the word yet, I can't do this yet, right? And you think about, my favorite author, Britt Andreatta, right? Oh, I called her Andreatta Britt earlier. Anyway, Britt Andreatta, she, I always talk about like building those neural pathways, right? Well, if you're with every message you tell yourself, I'm bad at this, I can't do this, whatever negative messages, you're building that neural pathway, you're reinforcing that. And if instead you change that message to something that's positive, I can't do that yet, I haven't done that yet, right? But you start to say, it's like the train, I think I can, I think I can. Anybody have that childhood story? I think I can. No. Yeah, thanks. Anyway, that was something that was always meant a lot to me as a kid, right? So it's really those messages you tell yourself. But any other things you want to share with folks before we head out to breakout sessions, Ashna or Ryan?
Yeah, I mean, one of the freeing things for me while we're talking about thoughts is learning that like your thoughts are not you. It's a stream of consciousness, and you can start to unpack the thoughts that instead of viewing them as like true or false, you view them as helpful or unhelpful, and you can start to test those and work with them. So you can even pick up a book about CBT from the library too. That's, you're better off with a professional, but if you're in a pinch, there's definitely some good things there too.
CPT. Can you
CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy.
Oh, yeah. CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy.
Pretty good books are out there. And I think one other thing.
There we go. Oh, look at that. The toolbox. Yeah. I love that. A book I haven't read yet.
Yeah. Yeah, no CBD, Ronald. Yeah.
All right. I'm writing that in the, good. Yeah, not CBD.
On the same topic, what Ryan mentioned about the thoughts, there's another book actually we already have in the resources, which is don't believe everything you think. And it's also one of the things. It's one of the books that I finished. Don't believe everything you think. It's the third one on the books and articles.
Great.
And that's also another one that is a good resource to help you with, like, just to give you a good perspective around. But what Ryan said is that your thoughts are not you. And there's a lot of the time things happen because of your negative thoughts, and they're just thoughts. That's not you, or that's not even the situation that you're in. It's just the perceptions that you've created based on a bunch of thoughts that you've had. So, and that can, lead to a lot of exhaustion, and, you're just stressed out. You don't want to do the work, and that can lead to burnout. So those are some good resources too.
Great. And Jay?
Yeah, thanks. Thanks, Jan. Okay, I don't know how to phrase this elegantly or articulately, but I'll try my best quickly because I know we're want to break. I was just reflecting on the worksheet. I was thinking, my first thought was, how do we recognize burnout in other, in friends, colleagues, family members? Like, how do we support others where we might notice these changes in? But then I thought the better question might be, unless anyone else is curious about that, the better question is, how do you, or what would you have to say with providing a sense of kind of compassion if what we list on if we identify what's burning us out is not something that we have any control over? And some of that has already come up, right? Like if you get laid off, so you job search because you need income, or if you're a single parent, or like there are systemic forces that may impact that may serve as a catalyst to us becoming burned out. And I'm just wondering if you would modulate your approach depending on whether am I burnt out because I am not good yet at saying no to things, so therefore I take on lots of things, or am I burnt out because I've got to work, I'm a dad, I'm not a dad, but if I was a dad, but I'm a dad and blah blah blah, and there's I just have all these responsibilities that I can't let go of. So
I mean, some of these things are a result of being human. Like, things get tough and hard for everyone. Like, I'm not saying that like my life is better than anyone's, and I'm not like coming from that angle. It's more of like it's really challenging. So a thing to think through is like, and this does you absolutely no good when you're going through a hard time. Like, hear me out here though. But if I think through things of like, I found myself in a hospital, worst moment of my life. I can look back at that now and be like, that actually put me in a better direction. Which that does zero for you now. I get it. Like, I would, if I was in a bad mood and a tough spot, I'd probably get maybe a little annoyed. That's super easy for me to say from where I am. So like, understand that's not how I'm taking this. But I think like, it's okay to like have a hard time. But like, I think it's like, maybe 95% of that pie chart is garbage. And it's like the things are going against you. Like, if you focus just on that, it's going to make that pain worse. So it's your back's against the wall. It's difficult. But if you were to look at that 5%, maybe there's that sliver of hope that you can dig out from. And that was certainly like, what it felt like for me, where, there's, and that wasn't the case at all. Like, maybe like it was, my own mind playing jokes on me a little bit, but maybe there's something, those small wins. And I like that concept too, where like, we just gave you a bunch of different things to do. Don't feel like you have to, oh, I'm not meditating and that's why I'm not happy. That's why I don't have that 7-figure job. That's why everything's not perfect. It really comes down to like, okay, what's one thing I can do to get a little bit better? And I want to puke in my mouth when I see those 1% better every day charts too. But like, if you can just take the lesson from that of like, okay, like, how can I just keep moving on a little bit more?
Yeah, no, it's definitely the message that you tell yourself too. You can be super, super busy, but what is your attitude towards it? What are the messages you're telling yourself? You can be excited to get out of bed, or you can dread getting out of bed. And how you frame it in your mind can have a big impact. Kathy, and then we'll go to breakout rooms.
Yeah, I don't. That 95% is useless. Where is that coming from? I mean, did somebody measure that somehow?
No, it's just that's a hyperbole that like a lot of it can seem in your life like maybe a lot of things are going wrong. What is the one thing what is something you can focus on in your life that you have control over?
Okay, that's way different.
Okay.
Yes.
No, I'm not quoting a study or anything. Like, no, I was just like for saying, like, for example, 95% of things might be going wrong. Maybe there's something that you can focus on.
Yeah.
Okay. It just, I mean, bad things are bad things. Like,
Yeah. So there could
I'm
be
not
bad
saying,
things out there,
yeah,
but
I'm not saying that we're focusing, like, we're ignoring it or anything like that too, but like maybe there's
No.
something.
Yeah.
There's
It's-
something found in that.
I
yeah,
mean, we have to be able to address something besides our self-talk. Because there could be something besides our self-talk influencing our tendency to burn out.
right.
That's as far as I got with my thought so far.
Okay. All right. Ashna, do we?
Just final, yeah,
Send us off. Because
Yeah, yeah.
I'm making the
Let's-
rooms a little bit smaller because we're gonna have less time for breakouts today.
yeah,
So,
yeah.
Ashna?
Yeah, I think I'm just gonna kind of, wrap it up to what Ryan was saying, and Kathy, for you too. And I think in general, it's just like, think about it. A lot of the time what happens is like we look at this bigger, goal that we have, and if we haven't achieved that in a day-to-day, we feel like, well, that can cause us burnout because we haven't achieved that goal. So we have to backtrack and think about, okay, daily goals, little goals. What is one thing that we can achieve today? And then, think about like, okay, that's it. That's getting 1% better into whatever that, bigger goal that we have. So we got to go back to, those habits and things that we talked about. We got to go back to just today. What is my goal today? And then start from there. Because that can help if we continuously think about that bigger goal. I need to go get a job. I need to get a job. I don't have a job today. I don't have a job today. That is going to cause you burnout. Break it down.
Breaking it down
Today,
into smaller steps.
I reached out to 3, networking opportunity, or I, signed up or sent an email, or I submitted a resume. That is your goal for today, and you've achieved it. Now go sell. Like, pat yourself for that because you did it. That goal is done, and eventually that bigger goal is also going to get, succeeded. So we have to, just come back and bring it down. Basically, that's what I would say.
All right. So grab the great advice, grab the slides, and because you'll want to refer to, because one of our questions is about the bounce back activities. So grab the slides, grab the notes, the link for the notes. I just put it in the chat again, and so did Kathy. And we'll come back in 15 minutes. Smaller rooms today, so you should be able to still have a quality conversation. Awesome. See you in 15.
Thank you so much for tuning into this week's episode of Success Hour, formerly known as CS Office Hours. We regularly put out new content, so to be the first to know, like this episode, tap that notification bell, hit that subscribe button, and we look forward to seeing you soon.